Hello, I'm Lisi Barella, VP of SMB Sales, and I'm excited to welcome you to the Mom Project's Blaze Your Own Path workshop series. We tailored these sessions to the topics our team has heard you share interest in to ensure you hear rich and beneficial insights to advance your business. The sessions we cover are all grounded in research published by the Mom Project's Research and Insights Division Werklabs. Our team is honored to have several of our partners join in these discussions to provide insightful perspectives and practical applications. We hope you enjoy our first installment and look forward to ongoing collaboration.
Welcome to the first installment in the Mom Project's Blaze Your Own Path Werklabs series. I'm Adrian Young with the Werklabs team. We're the Research and Insights division of the Mom Project, and our researchers track and evaluate often overlooked aspects of critical trends impacting moms, dads, and allies in work. We're headed up by Dr. Pam Cohen, who specializes in predictive analytics, and that allows us to really demonstrate the next level impact that trends and signals happening in work have on performance. Today's topic is about understanding the business case for flexibility, and we're delighted to have Graham Thornton, the CEO of Change State, with us. Hi, Graham.
Hi, happy to be here.
Great. Change State helps clients optimize, and you can say this better than I can, Graham, but I'll say what I understand it to be, optimize their HR tech and recruitment marketing. And Graham, I understand you brought more than 10 years of experience in the strategic talent acquisition space to this role leading Change State. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I cut my teeth in the talent acquisition space for, better part of a decade at Career Builder, founded Change State, a little over 4 years ago. And, it's been an incredibly fun journey. We've grown a lot, much thanks to the Mom Project for, part of that growth too. And just really happy to be here and, really having a good time building Change State over the last couple of years.
Well, excellent. We're so privileged to have you because I've seen firsthand some of the ways you've integrated and created real world context for workplace flexibility. And frankly, it's an incredibly innovative approach, and I can't wait for you to be able to share it with them. Can you just tell us a little bit about what compelled you to even be drawn to talk about workplace flexibility?
Yeah, well, look, we started Change State in May of 2019. And when we first started, it was Marty, my co-founder, and I, and, we were both based in Seattle. And, for anyone that's kind of paid attention to the news, 9 months shortly thereafter, the world kind of shut down, right? And, it presented a very unique, challenge for hiring and growth in general, right? No longer was anyone going into the office for the time being. So that, introduced some challenges for us as we were trying to grow our own teams. And it also kind of made you think of just more creative ways for, you to hire and attract talent. So we're a recruitment marketing agency. So we do help clients hire at scale. And I think that also gives us a unique lens for, what we're seeing with trends in the market when people are trying to attract talent as well. So, we can see it in advertising costs as an example. It can cost upward of, 10 times as much to attract talent in a particular market versus remote talent. And, as we've been growing our business over the past couple of years and helping our clients grow, being more flexible in where people work, what that environment looks like has just made it easier for us to, attract the right talent.
I think that, the acute perspective you have as having started pre-COVID, right before, and then having to kind of adapt and be agile during COVID also is a fascinating point of view as we look at the continuing evolution. We just keep seeing that adjustment phase. Do you feel like your approach and perspective now lets you enjoy the adaptation along the way? How do you feel about the evolving nature of it? Do you think that the return to office call is going to have big implications, or do you think that the talent preferences are going to kind of drive our way forward?
Um, well, my opinion might be different, right? But I think return to work is look, it makes sense in some aspects, right? But for us personally, we've tried a couple physical offices, it just doesn't work, so we've tried to find creative ways to build that same energy, that I think people are trying to find with on-site return to office sort of environments. But, if you look at what talent is looking for, they're looking for more flexible work arrangements. And, that might mean, more flexible hours, the ability to, sort of get tasks done asynchronously. If I want to go out and have to take my dog for a walk, that's hard to do if you have to be in an office. And, look, there are some jobs that you do need to be in the office for. Like healthcare is a perfect example, right? Like we're not having nurses that are going to work remotely, and that's going to be a challenge that continues to become more of a challenge over the next decade or two. But there are definitely jobs where workplace flexibility, the ability to work remote, is typically a non-starter, or can be for a large subset of talent.
That's so true. And I think that's a good starting point, which is how do we talk about workplace flexibility until we define what it means?
Sure.
And that topic just can become so polarizing when it centers purely on remote versus in person, which is a big part of the conversation. But like you said, there's industries where that's just not functionally feasible. We've talked to educators as well. Teachers just have to be in the classroom. That's just the necessity of the work. There are obviously exceptions to that where there are arrangements that are virtual environments, but predominantly that's going to be an an in-person role. So our workplace flexibility study that we did was with 1,700 full-time and part-time workers. And actually the single most impactful element of the idea of flexibility was the cultural context that it was occurring. So this culture of respect towards even the concept of flexibility and work-life integration. And that really anchors to this idea of we trust and support and respect our employees as whole humans. And the way that showed up in like research validated factors, or what's most significant in driving that experience, is top down organization wide support and then personal autonomy. Kind of like you just said, is there some choice in either how I work or where I work or the duration of time that I work? Or do I have some say, and do I have an environment that kind of respects and trusts that I do that? So how have you personally embraced that flexibility in designing the remote working model that you operate at Change State?
Yeah, well, I think you brought up a couple points, right? So, one, it's the concept of mutual trust between, your employees and who you're working with. I think, there's probably an inherent fear that, you're working remote, your boss wants to see everything that you're doing. And, there's sort of a big brother type component to it, which, I'll show you in a moment. We have our own, looks like a big brother piece to our own, work office. But, I think, because remote work has, come in, is here to stay, I think you have to look at that through a different lens. And that lens for us is, that opens up a whole new pool of talent that's available. Like we're not limited to hire, talent advisors just in the Seattle, Washington area. We can hire them, across the US. So that's one thing that is a huge bonus. And by doing that, right, like we can make sure that like we're opening up our talent pool to hire truly the best people or the best skill sets for the role. And I think, when you do that, like it's easier to feel comfortable or confident in the hires that you're making because you have a larger talent pool to choose from. So in a way, I think, this move to remote work, being a primary driver, flexible work being a driver, allows you to, feel more confident in that trust factor with your employees because, you're truly hiring, the best people regardless of where they're located. So I think that's a really big piece for us. The other piece of flexibility is I think about, it's the day-to-day interactions that like people that help reinforce that that trust, right? And you also have to, as a leader, live what you're preaching to your employees too. And for us, that's like I have a dog, she's sitting down here, I'm going to go take Roxanne for a walk today, and I'll probably take her for a couple walks. And, when I do, like, my team knows that I'm going to go take a dog for a walk, and that's okay. And, we might have to go to the vet, hopefully not, but we might have to go to the vet sometime. Right. And like, that's okay. Like, that's part of life, right? That's part of the day to day. And so, I think the right leaders are, being pretty open and transparent about, life as part of it. And, and that's, something that I think helps reinforce that, sort of culture of mutual trust. The other thing that, people get worried about, with this, move towards remote work too, is, like this concept of like, are we always expected to be working or online at this point too? And, so I think there's other little things that we've put in place that, again, help reinforce that, in our team shared agreement, we're not expected to be on call 24 hours a day. So, if I'm responding to an email at, 9 o'clock at night, which happens, right? We're a bootstrap business, we're growing. That's part of, I like to do it. I'm not going to send it at 9 o'clock at night. I'll schedule it to go out at 8 o'clock in the morning. And so, we're setting the expectation that, you don't need to write back to emails at 9 o'clock, right? We're not working 24 hours a day. And, we're working on training our employees to understand that, hey, like, some of this can be done asynchronously. Like, the expectation is not, 15-minute responses to emails. And I think that helps, create that culture of mutual trust that, hey, we are, we're living with that same sort of, those same rails, for how we're focusing on flexibility. Does that help answer that question, Adrian?
It answers it brilliantly. And in fact, that you covered two things that I want to touch on. And one is those cultural cues and the fact that you are even mindful as a leader to schedule when that email is going to come up is what we're meaning when we say organizational support. Because what we heard when we focused on remote specifically, and why this moved to the idea of organizational support, was that sometimes the idea of remote meant a heightened expectation around real-time constant availability. So you're preemptively managing that away and out of the equation by really leveling up the oversight that you have and how you model and, again, cue that it's really about the level of integration that you support between life and work, and that you're even yourself demonstrating taking those flexibility breaks to do things like walking your dog. And the other thing that you touched on that I think really crosses over with that is this idea that we call the flexibility advantage, which will look at it from the data outcomes, but also what you talked about from a talent access standpoint. Specifically for mid and small size businesses, the more we can be in line with the talent wishes, wants, needs, and preferences, the more access we have to the highest caliber talent to work for us. So I think that's a wonderful bridge back to, it's not surprising that the outcomes we get when we meet the talent needs is we have increased productivity gains, retention, and likelihood of referring our organization as a good place to work, which that's what we see show up in the data, is the more that we reach a level of satisfaction around the kind of workplace flexibility we have, the greater our outcomes as a business for gains, retention, and referral. So it sounds like you're kind of experiencing some of that as well. Do you mind, Graham? Because I got a preview showing what your interface looks like. That is how you accommodate. Thank you.
Sure. And I think that's a good, I'll preface this by saying, a decade ago, I got sick when it was like for a week and I couldn't go into the office, and it was boring, right? It used to be boring working remote, and like that wasn't fun because, you just didn't have tools. You didn't have tools to stay engaged with your teams. And, then I think the pendulum swung. Everyone's like, oh, remote work's the best. I only want to do that, and now like for us, we are, we're a remote first culture, right? We have people in 4 countries, we have people in 9 states across the US. And, what's super interesting about that is, trying to build a company culture at a startup over the last 4 years, when in actuality, like, some of us have never met in person. We haven't been to, I haven't met, who haven't I met? One of our recent employees lives in Indiana. I haven't been back to Indiana just yet. I went to high school there, but I haven't been back to meet her. But what we do have, I think you can see my screen now, as we use this tool called Spot, it's our virtual office. Huge shout out to our friends over at Spot. And, what this is, it's as close to a living metaverse as you're going to get. And so this is our office. This is our team. You can see a little nod to Seattle with our Space Needle, but people are working in here now. Nicole's out walking her dog, right? Cassie, I know that the team right now is sitting on a partner call with, one of our other vendors. If I wanted to come in here and ask anyone a question, I could pop up and quickly ask Bree if she, has an update on some of our social media posts that are going out. And, Nicole's alive, right? So she's waving to me because I just walked into the office. So, in a way, what we've kind of done here is I think we've recreated, sort of the pop-in that exists, right, in a normal office. And, we live here every day. Bree lives in Texas. Danny lives in North Carolina. Nicole lives in Colorado. Cassie lives in Florida. She actually lives 20 miles away from me, but we don't get together too often because we're sitting in the virtual office together. So, what this is, really helped us do is reinforce that, hey, it's okay to be remote first, but we still want to get together and we still want to build up a culture of how we're going to work. So, for us, I think, could you do some of this stuff with a Zoom? You can. I think there's also a lot of studies out there that show an increase in productivity when you're working with other people just nearby, just quite literally in the virtual room. So, I think there's probably something, connected to productivity for our team by being able to knock out tasks with some other teammates around. But yeah, we live in Spot. So Spot Virtual, by the way, we love them. And this is our office. But I'll tell you a couple things that we put in place, related to flex work, right? So, we're not in here 24 hours a day. We are, typically in, the expectation is to try and be in the office from, 9 a.m. till 3 p.m. Central Time. Pacific Time. If we're onboarding new employees, it's easy to pop over to someone's desk and, share your screen and share what you're working on, right? So, it's, we purposely don't use Slack. I feel like that's a little bit more intrusive, than popping in and, seeing if someone has headphones on in their virtual office. That means that they're busy. But it's been a real interesting and unique way, I think, for us to, really live and buy into, this virtual environment. And also, kind of show people that it's okay to put up your away message that you're walking your dog. Maybe it's the afternoon, I'm going to go sneak away for a workout. If it's, 4:00 Central, I know that one of our employees is going to be at the bus stop waiting for their kid. And that's fine. And, it's just, we're super transparent about it. It might look Big Brother because you're living in a cool little bubble, but, it starts from the top down, and we love our virtual office, and it makes things more engaging and more real for our employees.
Well, it's a fascinating evolution. I mean, it's about the most innovative interface I've seen so far. So good props and good promotion to Spot. That's excellent. And way to go, Change State, for figuring out a way and a manner. I'll say that this is some of the data that we continually track from the talent community. It's important to us to keep tabs on what's actually occurring. So one of the reasons, as we think about the most innovative way, which you're kind of demonstrating to do this, is that the talent demand and the talent need and the talent way forward is some version of flexibility. When we look at these stats, we're closing in on 1.3 million mom talent, and that's dads and allies as well. But the number one goal for job seekers is greater workplace flexibility. Even when transitioning into a role, that want a transition to more flexible work, we see 4 times the number of responses to job listings that cite remote. We have seen the continual, this is even dated now, it's gone from 44% to 72% as the preference for remote, and that just continues rising month over month. So it's imperative that we do figure out something. And then when we look specifically at something like DEI or gender parity across organizations, we even see a bigger tilt. When it comes to especially moms, I will say we heavily skew mom in our responses because we're the mom project. So those that identify mom are a heavy portion of our responses. But we see that flexibility is as equal as important as salary in many cases. We're seeing that it outranks salary altogether for a portion. I mean, we're talking about a tremendous push. We even now call it table stakes or cost of entry to do be mindful or be flexibility forward in the way that you approach future work and current work, honestly, especially like you said, to be able to capture this talent population that is phenomenal contributors, because we have that data also. So Graham might say if someone can't go as innovative as what you're using in Spot today, but does happen to have the agility as a smaller mid-sized businesses to start, what would you say is a practical way you could kind of toe in the water, feeling more comfortable, extending that trust and having some reciprocity in the way we offer our talent and our teams flexibility?
Yeah, well, look, I continue to say I think it's a lead by example piece, right? And for us, it's we are pushing teammates to take time off when we recognize that they haven't. We do. There are little creative things that everyone can put in place. Maybe it's a remote work stipend where, hey, like, you're going to encourage people one day a week to go work out of a coffee shop. Maybe it's giving people one day a month where you're working on one specific task. For us, we've also put together police put together what we consider a unique bonus where if you take a week off from work and you don't check your email or log into your shared or office, you get $1,000 spot bonus. So, like, I think there's a lot of interesting levers that you can pull to start testing some of the flexibility aspects for it. And sometimes it's just as much as I worked out of a cabin all winter in the middle of the mountains, and that was okay. We've had employees work from Greece for a week. That employees work from Florida because they want to take their kids down to see grandparents for a week. So I think there are little things that go a long way, and even if you have people that are coming on site like all day, right? Or you can test little pieces that move you towards a more flexible work environment when it's laxing on hours, right? And it's when it's laxing on locations of work, and it doesn't need to be a permanent move. It can be a week off, a week working here. It can be hey, taking after every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon off, as long as you have your tasks complete and you can complete them later on that day. So I think there's a lot of little levers that you can do to test and kind of pay attention to productivity in relation. I think the other piece that's harder to measure is just how energized your employees feel by feeling like they have control over some of these components too. And we've paid this $1,000 spot bonus for disconnecting. That doesn't mean everyone always takes a week off. I wish they would. We've paid remote work stipends to get people to go work out of a co-working space. People don't always do that, and that's okay too. It's helping people understand that, hey, these are unique benefits that we offer because we think it's important too. And hey, maybe for a month, people aren't gonna they're gonna need or want to be in the office every day. They're going to they're not going to be able to take the time off that they want because they're excited about a project that you're working on, and that's super exciting too.
Oh, that's excellent. I mean, that you're kind of exemplifying what we talk about, and also really mirroring what you've done in the interface, which is being really innovative in the way you approach that. The evidence is all around everything you just said. You're showing and demonstrating, giving evidence that it's a value system from the top down. I think that that's an incredible way, and that you would bonus someone from intentionally not responding to work is pretty progressive and incredible. I want to say you're talking about, you see that their motivation increases and what happens for them in terms of like well-being, and they can bring and energize the business back when they have that kind of restorative quality around being valued. And the other thing I want to say is that the women responses we had that are about the priority of this value of flexibility that we see in the slide were really grounded in this idea of working for a compassionate employer or being with a compassionate organization. And some of those, what you're calling levers that you're putting in place, are really demonstrating that brilliantly. And when we look at the data in a model standpoint, these are what those identified drivers are. And we see that that's kind of wrapping around this wheel and laddering up to this idea of greater retention, greater productivity, greater likelihood to recommend. I mean, the things like organizational support are about the evidence I see. What is it that makes me know that my organization supports that? And from a mid to small business perspective, the fact that you have the, again, agility to be able to shape something really creative and innovative, like you're talking about here with Change State, is a freedom that a lot of times is not possible maybe in a huge enterprise organization. And the outcomes that we gain, I'm slide switching again, are pretty profound. We're talking about, 28% higher rate of retention, 20% higher rates of productivity, 17% higher rates of likelihood to refer and recommend their organization. So it shows up consequentially in the business as well. So I feel like that when we can bring that purview to the decision around trying it or not, we see that it benefits the employee, just like you talked about. It benefits the contribution that they're able to bring, and also a reckoning that it's consequential to the business. So, Graham, do you mind sharing with us any specific examples of how you've seen fruit bear out, where you see maybe a sense of well-being influenced, or maybe the culture is really energized after one of those times away, or maybe you have high referral rates, things like that? Is there anything specific you could share?
Yeah, so I can tell you two things. One, we've never lost a employee, right? We've retained all of our employees, which is, I think, very hard to do. We've also never lost a client. So, arguably, I think we take a similar approach to, selecting our clients in the same way that we do, selecting our employees. The other thing is, if you ask your employees what they want, they'll typically tell you. But you also have to be willing to make changes or adjustments based on that feedback too. But yeah, I mean, look, I think one of the biggest things that we have a shared agreement. It's for our own internal employees. We also have separate shared agreements for our clients, and you just want to make sure that you're sticking towards what you're committing to. And so for our clients, that might be sticking to how we're going to communicate. Our expectations for meeting recaps, how we're going to measure success. For our internal employees, it's very similar. It's how we're going to communicate. It's the headline that we're all adults, but like one of the benefits of working here is we do have a flexible work schedule and work environment. That still means you need to get your work done. But if you do that, hey, you're choosing to work here because it's a fun environment. We're learning. We're always learning. We're going to push ourselves to be better. And then we have unique, benefits that, are things like, hey, you do get $1,000 bonus if you leave for a week. You can take off in the afternoon. In Seattle, it doesn't really get sunny that frequently in the winter. So, if the sun's out at noon on a Tuesday in December, I'm probably not going to be by my computer, and that's okay. And, I think that, the headline message that, we've always lived with, and it's quite literally the first sentence in our shared agreement for our employees is that, hey, we're all adults here. And that's, I think that's the theme. If you have leadership that, understands that we're not, herding cats in an organization, right? We have people that are genuinely bought into the success of the org, the success of our clients. That's allowed us to, feel like there's ownership in how we build this business too. But if you're, it's the same thing with ESAT surveys with companies, right, that we work with. If you're just surveying a lot of employees and you're not taking any action, from what they're telling you, that's going to be, when you start to lose attention, and that's when you're going to start to have challenges. You have to be willing to take, that feedback from employees and, either make adjustments or, be deliberate about why you can't. I think that's the other piece too. There's probably some things that we can't do, and that's okay. we have to be willing to make sacrifices where we can. So yeah.
Well, I think that you just depicted the exact definition of why Werklabs exists, which is how to be attuned and have the insight of the talent, employee, consumer, whomever it is, the population that you're hoping to serve, attract, retain, to be attuned to them, their wants and needs, view them as whole people, and then meet those needs in a way that's conducive for both parties. And that's what you've certainly done with Change State. And this is exactly why we define it as flexibility advantage, because the gains are when we are aligned and are attuned with our teams and the needs that they have, we benefit wholly. They do in their lives and their satisfaction level at work, and then thus, unsurprisingly, we do in our outcomes with them. So, Graham, first, thank you so much for joining us and sharing that perspective. Thank you, Change State, for being an innovative leader in the way workplace flexibility shows up. And thank you all for joining us in this discussion. And we wish you a very productive and flexible workday, and we'll share more details on this study and some of the specific recommendations you can incorporate into your organization as a follow-up to this. And now over to Lacey. Thank you.
Thank you for joining for our first session. You'll receive an email with a summary of the research study we discussed today, as well as a recap of the entire series. We look forward to seeing you at our next session. Thanks, everyone.